Okay, so yeah, this is our second public workshop on preliminary strategies for regional climate action. My name is Osamu, and I'm from Cascadia Consulting, part of the engagement team here today. Again, here's some of our um, core functions in Zoom and how to change your name and chat with other participants. If you need technical assistance at any point, please feel free to use that chat function to message Kenta Hikino. You can find his name, or you can just put a general message asking for help into the chat, and we'll come try to work with you. You can also use the raise hand function to do that. Like I said, if you want to introduce yourself, you can also put your name, your location or city that you live in the chat and any affiliations that you have. And just to quickly overview our agenda, we have some opening remarks by Abby. We will then go into a quick recap of progress that's been made on the Bay Area Regional Climate Action Plan, and a little bit of an intro about what the plan is. We'll go into some live polling and Q&A session, then give a very short introduction to the preliminary climate action strategies that the team has been working really hard to generate. We'll then go into another little Q&A and live polling session before doing a quick overview of climate action benefits and other considerations, and then finishing out in breakouts where we'd love to hear from you and have you in dialogue with one another. So with that, I will hand it over to Abby.
Great. Thank you. I'm so excited to see so many folks joining us. I'm Abby Young. I'm the manager of the Air District's Climate Solutions Program. Just a little bit of background. I've been at the Air District for 18 years, working on climate the whole time. And prior to that, I spent 11 years at a nonprofit called the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. Some of you know it as ICLEI, working on their Cities for Climate Protection campaign. So I've been working with local governments and climate protection planning for, you do the math. I'm scared to figure out how long it's been. So welcome everyone to our second public workshop on the Bay Area Regional Climate Action Plan initiative. And the acronym we use is BARCAP. So you'll hear that and see that a bit tonight. We're so very appreciative that all of you have set aside this time tonight to learn about this effort and share your thoughts with us. We know that your time is very valuable and we really appreciate you spending this chunk with us. Next slide. So we have several different goals for this workshop. We want to inform you about this regional climate planning initiative. We want to update you on some of the early concepts we've been developing for strategies or measures that we're considering including in the plan. And we want to hear your thoughts and feedback and reactions to those early strategy concepts. We're developing this plan in part with a grant from the US EPA. Our grant-defined geographic area includes the counties of Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, Napa, San Francisco, San Mateo, Solano, and Sonoma. The EPA has given a similar but separate grant to Santa Clara and San Benito County to work together on their own plan. Why, we don't know, but that's the way it is. But as we in Santa Clara County develop our respective plans, we're in a lot of conversation and coordination together. Now, speaking a little bit more broadly, on the one hand, this is a very exciting moment in time. This is the first ever Bay Area-wide climate action planning effort, and there are a lot of opportunities before us. But it is also a very tense moment in time as we've been thrown into a great deal of uncertainty around federal funding, you know, priorities, federal policy priorities. While our guess is as good as yours, honestly, with regard to what might happen at the federal level, we can say that the Air District remains very, very committed to this project and to the implementation of this plan, along with the many partners that we're working with. So as we move forward, we're focusing on what we can do given the strong support that we have from the state of California, from local and regional governments throughout the Bay Area, from community choice energy programs and other kinds of many, many important types of stakeholders. So we'd like tonight to be about what we can do and encourage solutions-focused ideas and conversation. So with that, I think, Osamu, you've got a poll question for folks?
Yes, we do have our first poll, and we are interested to see who's in the room with us today. We're going to go ahead and launch that. You should see it come up on your screen, and you can share which county you live in the Bay Area. And we're also asking you, what's one thing that makes your community special? And you um, should be able to um, share up to a couple sentences there if you would like to. I know some people on their phones, so typing is kind of challenging, but thank you. It's great to see. I will share the results in just a second, but I can see people are taking it. We've got about half of our participants have taken the poll so far. Great. Seeing basically every county in the planning area represented except for Napa County right now. Okay. I'm going to give it maybe 10 more seconds so people who are writing their um, special community response can finish up. Great. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So yeah, unfortunately, yeah, no Napa friends here today, but we have every other county represented and some. Um, thanks everybody. And I actually can't see the long answer response as far as I can see, but I'm excited to read those after the event. Okay. All right. On to the next. Now, I just wanted to share that we have this event feedback form, which you can take by either or share your feedback in either by going to this URL, which Kenta will put into the chat, or by pointing your phone at the screen and using the QR code to go to that form. Great. Thank you. And that is an optional and anonymous form. And I think all questions are anonymous and optional on that. All right, now we have Jameson Rogers-Gibson presenting. Jameson, sorry, let me just pull up your bio. Um, oh, I'm sorry. Great. Jameson is a senior advisor to the Air District's Climate Solutions Program. She has a background in public health, local climate planning, and community engagement. Jameson is the project lead for the BARCAP.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Samu. And just want to extend a good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We know your time is really precious. So we really appreciate you being here with us tonight to share your input into development of the Bay Area Regional Climate Action Plan, or BARCAP, as we affectionately call it. It's been a while since our first public workshop, and several of you may be hearing about the BARCAP for the first time. So over the next few slides, I will provide some background and then share a few updates on what we've been up to since our workshop last year. Next slide. Here in the Bay Area, we've been seeing the impacts of global climate change in real time. It's making extreme weather events like heat waves and storms and floods more frequent and more intense. And similarly, it's causing the dry, warm conditions that are conducive to wildfires and wildfire smoke to be more common, and it's leading to sea rise along our coasts. And the impacts on our communities, our infrastructure, and our economy are significant. And as we've seen both here and with the recent LA fires, they can be devastating and even deadly. And we know that our activities, if left unabated, will continue to contribute to these impacts. Next slide. These activities span all sectors of our economy, and the vast majority of the greenhouse gas emissions or climate pollution result from the burning of fossil fuels to move people and goods, to heat and cool our buildings, to power industrial processes, and to produce electricity. And in addition, the breakdown or decomposition of organic waste like food scraps in a landfill also releases greenhouse gas emissions. And livestock and wildfires are sources of emissions as well. On the flip side, natural working lands like rangelands and forests and agricultural lands act as storage or sinks for carbon dioxide, which is the most predominant climate pollutant. And they do that by removing it from our air and storing it in plants and soils and other organic matter. Next slide. Here in the Bay Area, local governments and others have been working on climate change for 2 decades now. And they've identified the key actions and critical roles that local governments and communities can play in their climate action plans. The state also has a roadmap to achieve carbon neutrality statewide by 2045, and that focuses on the state's unique role across these sectors. So the BARCAP focuses on the space in between, on how regional action and collaboration can help us more effectively reach the state's carbon neutrality goal. The BARCAP addresses actions that local governments cannot achieve alone, and it also identifies critical regional actions that are necessary to support successful implementation of the state scoping plan. It's also a regional plan, which means that while the Air District is coordinating development of the BARCAP, we won't be the only implementer. Many of the measures will be implemented by a mix of agencies and organizations that are not the Air District. So we're focused on forming committed partnerships to implement the plan as we develop the BARCAP. And we're also thinking through existing funding and positioning the region to take advantage of future funding opportunities when they come. Next slide. This effort, as you may be hearing from me, is a bit different than other climate action plans that you may be familiar with. We've noticed, and stakeholders have shared with us, that there are some climate solutions that are too large in scope for one city or one county, and the BARCAP helps fill those gaps. Examples could include challenges that are facing the region, that as we are working towards a diverse work electrifying residential buildings, or the many places across the region that are in danger of losing the carbon that's stored in natural working lands through wildfires, which also threaten homes, lives, and livelihoods. A regional coordinated approach to reducing wildfire could benefit the region in that way. So the BARCAP goes beyond a jurisdiction by jurisdiction approach to help address the hurdles to these actions that span counties. And similarly, it seeks to lift up successes in one part of the region, like an innovative, holistic building retrofit program or brownfield to brightfield solar plus storage project to encourage wider adoption across the Bay Area. Next slide. We've got 4 core goals to guide development of the BARCAP. The first aligns with the state's greenhouse gas reduction targets, which include climate neutrality by 2045. Regional actions alone will not get us there. We'll also be incorporating greenhouse gas reductions from state actions to help show carbon neutrality. We also want to move towards carbon neutrality in a way that creates healthy air and improves well-being for all Bay Area residents, but especially frontline communities throughout our region. And by frontline communities, we're referring to those communities that bear the brunt of the impacts from fossil fuel dependence. And this includes disproportionate exposure to air pollution and other environmental hazards. These communities often also experience the most immediate and the worst impacts of climate change, like extreme heat and flooding. The third goal focuses on complementing and building upon rather than duplicating the state's efforts and local climate action plans. And I spoke to this goal a little bit earlier, but to put it another way, we're really thinking about what can we do better together as a region that we could not accomplish on our own individually. And the fourth goal addresses key issues that extend across multiple sectors or aspects of the plan, including resilience. We're looking to maximize the resilience co-benefits of the measures, workforce development, and some new and emerging technologies. Next slide. So here's our vision for the Bay Area when these goals are realized. This is, in essence, what we're working towards through implementation of the BARCAP. That we have a Bay Area where achieving our climate goals fosters thriving communities, healthy natural systems, and a sustainable and prosperous economy. On the path to that future, we will create family-sustaining jobs, inspire innovation, improve air quality and public health, and prioritize environmental justice. Climate actions should improve our everyday lives. That is one of the core aspects of this vision, and especially our frontline communities. Next slide. The Air District is not developing the BARCAP alone. We are fortunate to have an advisory work group that is composed of representatives of regional agencies, all 8 counties in the city of Oakland, several community-based organizations, and community-serving organizations. And the advisory work group meets quarterly to help us develop the process to create the BARCAP, to help connect us to communities in their counties, and also to share and discuss key challenges and what they see as opportunities that the plan can address. Next slide. Over the next few slides, I will share some key engagement updates since our first public workshop last year. The first are technical work groups that we stood up that are focused on different economic sectors. And these work groups are helping us more fully characterize and understand the landscape of each sector, brainstorm what can be done regionally that is additive and not duplicative to both state and local action, to help us investigate challenges, obstacles, or barriers to implementation, and also to help us think through and reflect other engagement input to hone in on potential strategies. And these work group members include regional implementers that range from community choice aggregators, food recovery organizations, local governments, regional agencies, community-based organizations, resource conservation districts, ports, and more. The work groups began meeting in October of last year, and they will be meeting through March of 2025. Next slide. The Air District has also partnered with 8 CBOs across the region on a series of community workshops that we're holding this month to engage members of frontline communities. And this map identifies frontline communities in the colored census tracts that you see there on red, blue, and yellow. And this is based on EPA's IRA disadvantaged communities, AB 617 communities, and then also NTC's equity priority communities. And knowing that 8 counties is a very large region to cover, we've also developed a public survey to help make sure that we get a better picture of concerns and priorities for regional climate action from across the region. So you can access that survey through this QR code or the link that we have on the slide. And we really encourage you to please take the survey and then to also share it with your networks. Next slide. We've also continued to seek input from local governments on opportunities for the BARCAP to address local needs regionally. And this includes key challenges and obstacles that regional action can help address and local successes that we can elevate regionally. To do this, we've been attending regularly occurring meetings that have been convened by counties across the region. Next slide. So here's the timeline to develop the BARCAP and submit it to the EPA by the end of the year. As you can see, we're currently developing draft measures, and we're seeking input now through this workshop and several other engagement efforts that I've mentioned before draft measures are finalized to help us shape the measure language. There'll be another opportunity to provide additional feedback on the measure language this summer. We are planning on posting the measures online this summer. And so you'll be able to provide input that way too. And then staff will revise and will finalize the measures and then draft the plan in the fall and early winter to submit it to EPA by the deadline. Next slide. So as we're refining the preliminary strategies for the BARCAP, which we'll be sharing with you later in the workshop, we're especially interested in hearing from you about, did we miss anything key? Is there anything else we should be considering? We also want to hear how these actions might impact your everyday life, specifically which actions most benefit you and your communities and how. And then also, are there potential harms that we need to guard against as we're developing these measures and implementing them? And how do we do that as well? So I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on these questions and getting into the conversation. And I think we have time for a couple questions, Osami, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll start just by going briefly through the questions that people have been posting in the chat, and then I think we might have time maybe to take one, if there's any that if you don't have the ability to write into the chat, if you want to raise your hand, we can maybe take one before we keep going to the rest of our very full agenda tonight. I would love to start with Olga's comment asking if we could please define measure. And I'm wondering maybe Jameson, if that is something you'd be willing to take a stab at.
Sure. So the way that we have developed this, and I think what you'll see is sort of what we're calling preliminary strategies or sort of preliminary measures. So they are the approaches that we can take through from a regional perspective to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so you'll see that they're still somewhat high level, and we're anticipating as we further fill it out that there will be more detailed actions that describe how these measures will be accomplished. But if you think about it, there's kind of the overarching goal and then measures that describe the strategies to get there. And then we will have some more detailed actions as well.
So just to kind of summarize, it sounds like measures are broader categories and then actions are more specific within those. Yes, great, thank you. And then Chris has a question. Are the actions you have in the survey you just posted? The survey has been open for a few weeks, but I think or a week maybe, Jameson, correct?
I think it's been open since maybe late January.
Okay, great. So a couple weeks, but yeah, are the actions listed there the full list of actions, or is that a partial list?
I think the actions in the survey are trying to describe different ways that we can reduce emissions and getting input. And so they those actions are things that we are considering for inclusion in the plan. One of the things that we're thinking about for this plan and that EPA requires is that we identify who would potentially implement things, right? So we're thinking about the actions from a regional perspective and what kind of a regional level action might be. So you might see some slightly different language when the draft measure language comes out, but I think in essence, the concepts are similar.
Great. I think we can take one more question, either from the chat or from the, if anybody wants to raise their hand.
There's a question in the chat that just went in the chat that I'd like
Oh,
to answer. If you could read
great.
it, Samu.
Yes. Kathy asks, how much of this is dependent on EPA approval? If the EPA stops working on climate altogether, can a plan still go forward regionally?
It's a good question and probably something that's on a lot of people's minds. The EPA does not approve this plan. And so there's a lot of latitude for us to make this a plan that works for our region. If the EPA were to stop, sorry, I'm getting something flashing that says, it sounds like I've switched to a different language. I hope you're still hearing me in English, everyone. Okay, all right, I'm gonna ignore that then. This plan will still go forward. So the Air District and our partners are committed to finishing this plan, to making it a plan that's going to work for our region. And then, but part of what Jameson mentioned was we have to find partners that will help us implement it. So, you know, a lot of what we're focusing on is what can actually be you know, really realized and implemented. And so that's why we want to focus on, you know, solutions discussions today. I hope that helped answer that question.
Yes, thank you, Abby. And I'm getting some really excellent, especially transportation related questions in the chat, which I think will be better served in our breakout groups. We will have one that is specifically about transportation with a technical expert. So feel free to, you'll be able to self-assign to where your interests are. We now have another Zoom poll to start to get us towards that breakout. I know we have over 60 people in the room, so we are hoping to start to have you break out by interest area in just a minute. This Zoom poll asks which area of climate solutions you feel you know the most about. There is only a single choice here, but you will have the choice in breakout rooms to go to 2 different sectors. So just put your top interest here. We're just trying to get a sense for where we have the most interest. So I'm getting some mic pops. Okay. Great. Okay. I'm going to wait just a few more minutes. We have about 75%, but if the last few people wouldn't mind taking the poll. Okay. And if you'd finished that, okay, great. Oh, we have everybody. I'm going to end the poll. So we actually have a pretty even distribution of interest across our 5 sectors of greenhouse gas emission reduction. So that is very good for our breakout groups. We have one more question before we get into the preliminary strategies and actually digging into those. And we'd love if you would just share in the chat if you could think of a specific action that could be taken to decrease climate pollution. What is a potential benefit or a potential harm that action might create for you or your community? It's not to say that it couldn't be avoided or secured if we thoughtfully implemented a specific action, but we're just curious what's one that you think of when you think about your community specifically. I think just for sake of time, I'll just ask folks to share in the chat their thoughts about this so that we can keep going towards breakout groups. Oh, thank you for being here, Judith. Please feel free to fill in if you have any last comments in the chat, and we'd love to get your input that way. Reduced air pollution. What a great example for the air district. Planting hedges as carbon sinks. Very cool. Wendy says safer streets. Saves people money to reduce vehicle miles traveled. Okay. Thank you for these great examples. We're starting to move our brains towards where the next couple of presentations will go. We just have a little bit more presenting, and then we promise we'll get you out into a deeper dive discussion. Promote nature-based solutions in urban areas and beyond, cool our cities, reduce air pollution, enhance biodiversity, improve public health, and more. From Juliet. That is a great list. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Let's keep going. We're back to Abby for a presentation about preliminary strategies for regional climate action. So this is what the Air District team has been working on.
What we're kind of teeing up for our
Yeah.
conversations as we go into the breakouts. And I hate that I am standing in between everybody and these great ideas that you're already peppering this meeting with. So I'll try to be, concise. Over the next few slides, I'll be talking about what our ideas for strategies or measures, we're kind of using those terms interchangeably, are for the different sectors. But before we talk about what we're going to do, we need to take a quick look at where our emissions are coming from. So we can go to the next slide. This pie chart shows greenhouse gas emissions for the 8-county, remember, we're not including Santa Clara County, project area for a base year of 2022. And I want to point out a couple of observations. First, how dominant transportation is. In addition to that 32%, I think I have to put my glasses on. In addition to that 32% of emissions from the transportation sector itself, about 60% of the emissions coming from that orange industry slice, so a little more than half of industry, is representing transportation in some form because it comes from the refineries in the Bay Area. So a lot of emissions are coming from us moving people and goods around the Bay Area. I also want to point out that the green wedge for residential and commercial buildings only represents the fossil fuel combustion in the buildings. So that's the natural gas use. We know the buildings also include electricity. That's what you're seeing in the power sector. That power sector, the light blue, represents power emissions from power production, electric generation in the Bay Area. And so that's sort of a proxy for the electricity, or some of that is electricity that's used in buildings. So that sort of explains a little bit about what's going on here. Now, I want to say a couple things about the industrial sector. Current state law specifically prohibits local air districts from regulating carbon dioxide emissions from sources that are covered by the state's cap and trade law. This includes many industrial facilities, including refineries in our region. In fact, about 98% of the industrial sector greenhouse gas emissions are covered by the state's cap and trade program. So that severely limits what the air district is able to do to affect emissions in this sector. But we will be watching how the state's process to extend its cap and trade program progresses and might affect what is currently limited authority. Now, all that being said, the air district can still regulate non-carbon dioxide greenhouse gas emissions from industry, such as methane. And we are doing that through several different regulations, and we're exploring additional ones. In addition, many of the air district's rules to reduce air pollutants, so non-greenhouse gas air pollution from industrial sources, also happen to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as a co-benefit. And maximizing these greenhouse gas co-benefits from our rulemaking is a very important part of the Air District's strategic plan. Okay, next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, we're focusing on the things that we can control in each sector. And the main things that we'll be talking about in our breakout sessions are how we move around, both people and goods, the natural gas that we use in our buildings, the nature of the electricity that we use to power our economy, how clean, how local, how reliable is it, and the organic waste that we produce and discard. Next slide, please. In these areas where we can take action, there are things we can do. There are things we can do that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And these are actions that can be shaped by regional and local governments to ensure that they're developed and implemented with environmental justice and equity in mind. And these are big, as Jameson mentioned earlier, big objectives of this plan, is to shape the measures in this plan in such a way that they'll have environmental justice and equity benefits. Next slide. Okay. It's important to shape these climate actions so that we benefit lots of different aspects of our daily lives, right? And I'm not going to read all these. You folks can read all these, but it's important to keep in mind that there are so many benefits that can come to communities when we take actions that protect the climate. And so these are the kinds of things that we're going for in developing this plan. How can we maximize these kinds of benefits as we develop the strategies / measures and actions in the plan? Next slide. And just as we want to maximize the benefits of climate action, there are important considerations to take to make sure that we avoid potential negative impacts. For example, it's important to take impacts on the cost of utility bills into consideration as we're developing lots of these strategies, or the safety of cyclists and pedestrians as more people transition out of cars as we implement our trip reduction program. So and jobs, what are the impacts on jobs? So these are all things that we need to consider as we're shaping and developing these measures to make sure that we don't fall into any of these pitfalls, right? And some of them are quite challenging. I think that I hand it back to you, Asamu, for another polling question before we go into breakouts.
Actually, we're just going to do a quick Q&A
Q&A, that
about
was it,
the
Q&A.
preliminary strategies, just one or two questions, but I would say if you have any deeper dive strategy questions, let's maybe think about reserving those for the breakout groups where there's a technical lead who can really help share. Any kind of higher level questions about the preliminary strategies and um, the benefits and considerations? Feel free to raise a hand, or there's a lot of people on, so I think if you want to just unmute and start talking, there is a space for you to do so right now. Okay, here's a question from Olga. Where are you getting money?
I assume that means to implement the plan, not to develop the plan. And, where we always get money. So there's a lot of state programs. Obviously, federal money is in question right now. One of the pieces of this development process is researching funding sources and developing some funding pathways for a number of the measures that we include in the plan. So we're looking at existing committed federal funding sources, at state funding sources, regional funding sources, also potential financial mechanisms, creative financing. So if any of you have suggestions on funding and financing, we would love to hear those as well.
Always a critical question. Okay, let's see. See two great questions. One, how will the region be held accountable for implementing the BARCAP, and who will be held accountable? And then two, does the air district have emergency authority, i.e. actually declaring an emergency and treating the emergency response like we would for a wildfire or earthquake? Yeah, does anybody want to take a stab at those?
I'm not sure I quite understand the last one. I mean, we respond to immediate emergency, immediate health events like refinery, fires like we have recently. I'm not sure beyond that. I don't know that we don't really, I may not be understanding the question though, I apologize. And the first one was authority to implement? No,
accountability.
So this is a voluntary plan, okay? It's a voluntary plan. So when we talk about legal accountability, there's not legal accountability. But if we talk about accountability in the transparency and tracking and public reporting kind of sense, then that's definitely something we want to build into the implementation part of the strategy. One thing this is not an air district only plan. So part of what we have to do is identify actual implementing I don't know, entities. So whether that be public agencies or organizations that have authority and ability to implement different measures and actions. That's really what we need to find, and we need different agencies and organizations to step up and take on those roles. Yeah.
Including cities, right, Abby? Because
Oh
there's
yeah.
another question about how are we coordinating with cities, and I think you've talked a lot already about just the really extensive touch
Hmm.
points you have with your city counterparts who are working on climate action plans. But yeah, in terms of implementing as well, I think
Hmm.
that's a crucial party.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I do um, I actually think we should take this industrial emissions question as our final one before we go
Mhm.
into breakout rooms. But I think I'll just go ahead and announce now. The Air District staff have very kindly agreed to stay on for an extra half hour in case there are any lingering questions that you have that we don't have time to get to during breakout rooms. So fear not. If you are able to stay as well, we can get your more general questions addressed there. But now we do have this opportunity to go into sector-specific breakouts, and you can really nerd out about transportation and other things like that there. So yeah, maybe we take this question from Crystal. Will industrial emissions then be covered by advocacy to influence cap and trade reforms?
Um, I if folks want to do that, that's probably not something we're going to include specifically in this plan. But that's all local governments and public agencies have their own advocacy programs, and that's certainly something that could be taken on.
Great. Thanks for that. Uh, Thank you. Looks like Dan has to run, maybe a few other folks. Susan, I think we'd love to have you fill in the breakout rooms, and then if you still have questions, we can do take them during the Q&A. And I think Patrick, you as well. But thank you, everybody. Okay, I'm gonna now do a quick explanation of how the breakout rooms work. I really urge people to stay. I think you're going to find it's a really um, great way to get into smaller conversation that can go deeper. Um, as a reminder, we are very interested in your feedback on how we can reduce climate pollution across these different sectors. Um, the basically we have these key climate actions identified in each sector. What's going to happen is we will go into breakout rooms and you will have a chance to learn about the different climate actions that have been identified preliminarily, um, to give some feedback on what's missing, and then to talk a little bit about benefits and other considerations of those actions, or other actions that you think should be taken in those sectors. Um, so, what I'm hoping for is that we can have everybody go to their first choice room. I know we all shared in the poll what our sector that we're most familiar with or interested in is. So I'd ask that you go there first, and then we'll be in those groups for 15 minutes, and then you'll have a chance to all come back into the main room and go into a second group. And you can then go to your second most interesting topic to you. So again, that's by sector. When here, in just a second, we'll open the breakout rooms and you'll see that you can kind of select which one you want to go to. Yeah, so let me just share how we're going to take notes during this. If you just give me one sec. Great. We have a mural board set up. I don't know if folks have used mural before, um, but it is a very handy kind of collaborative tool. Can you see my screen now? Great. Um, we're going to share the link to this, and what you'll do is if you are a more tech savvy person, you can go to the link and go to the mural board and start typing away yourself. If not, fear not, we will have facilitators in the breakout groups who can type for you. So maybe I just ask folks to, when you're talking, to try to use your raise hand function on your screen to get in the queue so the facilitator can manage the conversation in an orderly way. What we'll do is they'll go through, so right now I'm looking at let's see, for example, the power section. You can use this outline tool if you're navigating yourself to go to um, the sector that you're going to be in. So go up to the top right corner and you should see this outline button, and then click to the sector that you're in. Then you can kind of zoom in and out like you normally would on a web page. We are going to go through the actions and then ask, okay, what's missing? Is there anything else we should consider moving forward? We will have experts in your group who can let you know if you have any more detailed questions, what the thinking has been so far on those topics. This is not a complete list of climate actions that will be in the BARCAP, but it is the things that we feel like will move the needle the most. Then in terms of emission reduction, then we will share some of the benefits and considerations that have been thought about in terms of each of these climate actions. And then we want to hear from you. How might these climate actions benefit your communities? And what are some other considerations to keep in mind? And then we will all come back together and do it one more time. Okay, great. With that, we are going to open up the breakout rooms. And I just want to let folks know if they are like, oh my gosh, how do I sort myself into a breakout room? To just let us know, and we can sort you yours and help you get there. Okay, great. Looks like people are figuring it out. Is anybody like, where is the breakout room button?
I am.
Okay, Kathy. Um, I can just sort you
I was
if you
gonna go
just tell
into
me what's your buildings.
buildings.
Okay, we'll put you there. Okay, give me 1 second. Oh, you did. Oh, great. Thanks. Okay, we have a few more folks. Can I help you get to where you want to be? Yes, Olga, we can put you into transportation, definitely. I've got that. Mercedes, can I help you get into a breakout room? Joanne, what breakout room would you like to be in? Green Urban. Okay, I'll put you there. Gary, they are, if you go to the breakout room button, it's a little window pane looking thing. You should be able to click join. I can also assign you if you just tell me of the power, transportation, buildings, waste, and natural working lands, which would you be most interested in? Okay. Kenta, could you help these folks get sorted? I need to go help facilitate.
Yes,
Okay,
I'll do that.
thanks.
Gary, I'll send you to buildings momentarily. All right, should be done.
Can I join a breakout room?
Yes, absolutely. Is there a certain breakout room you'd like to be a part of? Out of power, transportation,
Transportation.
buildings, transportation? Okay, I'll send you there. All right, it should be assigned. Let me know if you're having trouble joining. Perfect. And Mercedes or Sophia, are either of you having trouble joining a breakout room or would like to be a part of a certain room?
Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Sorry, that was such a whirlwind. I know it's a lot of information, and we were really grappling with how do we get this huge amount of very technical information to the people who care about it the most, all of you. So thank you for sticking with us and sharing some really awesome, informative ideas. I'm gonna just quickly do a little recap of where we're headed off to next with the BARCAP, and then we will go into our half hour of just open house, which will facilitate just with the hands function. So if you want to raise your hand or use the chat, we can start to go into that in just a sec. But let me just share a screen. All right. Okay, we are going to quickly go to the facilitators to ask you to do a 60-second recap of some of the feedback that you heard. I see Mia smiling right now, but to put you on the spot, no, we can maybe take volunteers. Yes, Force, go ahead. Why don't you kick us off and just mention which group you were facilitating to, if you could.
I was facilitating the Natural and Working Lands group along with Andrea. Gail, I wanted to let you know that I would love to see the rest of that thought in the chat. Really interested in your last point. Some of the big through lines that we heard is that urban green spaces are a tool that requires a lot of education. Like, yes, they have these shade and climate benefits, but until we get people to be educated and involved in the city planning process to avoid any equity adverse side effects, and also make sure that they're educated about the space and how to care for it and how it relates to the natural world. That's a really important and oftentimes overlooked part of urban greening. Juliet, I hope I got your thought right there. And we also got some great examples of how equity and urban greening have played out in the city of Santa Rosa, as well as concerns about the intersection of sea level rise and natural and working lands. Thank you to my group. I wish we had more time.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Wow, what a rich discussion. Thank you for modeling to how to do just a quick high-level overview. Who else? Facilitators who can give us a quick recap.
I can go ahead.
Thanks, Monty. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I was the lead for the transportation sector, and things that we heard were around sort of goods movement, with the increase of e-commerce, and so increased, truck deliveries, and the need for potentially looking at truck attracting businesses and how to better electrify them. There was also a lot around shifting to biking, walking, transit. The fact that, road expansions just increase, car travel. And so also the need for higher density, and looking at ways to match housing with goods and services and transit.
Yeah, I was your note taker, and I think just as a planner by training, loved how land use oriented everybody was. And thinking about how that affects our decision about what modes we use. Thanks, Monty. Who else?
I can share.
Thank
So
you.
I was the power sector, and there was a lot of great points, and I see folks are still adding to the tiles. So please keep doing that, even if you weren't able to finish it while we were in the room. Some ideas that came up related to thinking about job training and finding ways to ensure that there are folks in the region that have the skill sets. And also finding ways to work more effectively with the IOUs and to think about rate reforms. There was concern about potential rate increases as well. Folks mentioned that we should be thinking about 24/7 renewable electricity, thinking about it that way. And then someone else mentioned a community solar plan as well. And then in terms of the benefits, folks mention reliability for this sector, as well as kind of independence from the grid. And then once again, a lot of the considerations were around working with utilities and also increases in rates too. Oh yes, thank you. Sorry, too much jargon. Investor-owned utilities. So basically for our region, it would be PG&E. Thanks.
Okay, 2 more to go. Go ahead, Mia.
Okay, so I had the materials and waste sector, and a lot of it was on landfill, landfilling organics. So a focus on contamination, what belongs in the organics, being clear about that, reusables to reduce plastic contamination, and community composting to both increase the awareness of what belongs in organics and also carbon sequestration benefits and kind of food access community benefits. There's also talk about scope 3 upstream emissions reductions, which are so much bigger from material consumption than just the landfill waste. But also on the waste, the landfill side, regulating the methane from landfills and composting facilities, and some other state examples were given, and also the benefits to air quality for communities around those facilities.
I think I'll go last. Rich here facilitated the buildings breakouts and actually saw some good alignment with people that I put ideas in the tiles that were in actions that we were already developing that weren't actually on the slides. That was a good confirmation. Some other really interesting comments about, sort of understanding what other impacts that some of these interventions could be, like related to seismic safety issues, which are a concern. Some shared themes around, kind of how to end the gas system or equitably transition off of gas, not just at the building level, but at sort of at the larger scale. And that could include funding, neighborhood scale or zonal electrification pilots that would help get entire neighborhoods off of gas together. And then we had some conversations that were also about making sure that the installations for heat pumps that are going in are done well, which are definitely echoing some thoughts that we're having internally. And that gets to training and making sure people are really equipped in understanding the technology so that when they go in, they're working for people and they're not complaining. And that's all going to be good for us in the long term. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody, for your recaps. I will just move us into our final, just quick asks, and then invite anybody who still had lingering comments and questions to join us for a little bit of extended Q&A. Please take and share our public survey. We are working on a Spanish language version to release in the next couple weeks, but until then, we have this English language version and would love for you to take it back to your communities and networks. We'll reshare that link. Just as a reminder, we have these public workshops and really emphasizing that these are preliminary actions. So we wanted to come to the public before these were at all, set in stone, to make sure that you were really truly influencing what's in the plan. There will be some further work to process the survey results and then to finally draft the plan and submit it to EPA by the end of the year. We have, again, the event feedback form, which if you had any comments today, we'd welcome. And we also have a listserv if you want to get updates about when the draft plan is posted. There will be kind of an online platform where you can read through the draft plan and make comments there more extensively once that is ready to share. Great. And that is our whole presentation, but I will stop share and start to queue up your questions. Any hands?